Hello and welcome everybody. My name's Darren McCall. I am Marketing Director of Free Partners. Free is a brand and communications agency that has a roster of around 30 insurance businesses on our books currently, and we help our clients stand out and grow strong. Today we are talking about econometrics and AI. Some of you may know of the commentator Mark Ritson, who has said or made claim that econometrics is pricey and complicated and therefore a bit of a distraction and a diversion from what's important when it comes to marketing. We're here today to basically get to the bottom of exactly what it can do for you when it comes to being a marketing decision maker, working with a CFO and C-suite who need to see results. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Gary Cole, who's our guest speaker today. Gary's founder and data scientist at Loomlink. He's really going to be responsible for kind of answering any questions you may have about how this might work for your business and how really accessible it is to you. Gary, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm actually driving the slides, so we may sound like something out of a government update due to that's COVID related. Next slide, please. But I hope we're going to do this in a fairly kind of smooth way. Fingers crossed. But over to you.
I'll try and have an indicator of rubbing my ear or something, which gives us the move on to the next slide. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the intro. Effectively, Loomlink is a science-based business, and hopefully over this next half hour or so, I'll go through various points for consideration. There's a lot of miscommunication about AI. AI is a really great buzzword, but it is just a buzzword. It's I suppose one of those talking points that enable people to say they know there's a direction and they know that there's innovation available, but effectively it's just a tool. And that tool's kind of come around from the progression of the big data analytics and big data platforms through to people moving to the cloud. Effectively today, and hopefully what we'll talk about, is that we've moved away from the point of not really understanding or having lots of silos of data, and effectively in the future, we're going to be able to do things a lot faster, a lot cheaper, and move away from this old kind of guard of data transformation. And I don't understand what's going on in all these different silos, or using stats that are misleading. And hopefully we'll talk about a bit more of that today.
Excellent.
So a little bit more, thank you, dear. A little bit more about us. So Loomlink, as I said, is a science-based business. We help businesses understand what's actually happening or become data-led in their organization. Effectively, in the bit that you don't have to go in depth, but I'm always happy to, and my team are, our theory is called complexity theory, which enables you to do three main disciplines. One, that's creating predictions from your data. Two is causal, so i.e. what's the cause and effect? And there's a few examples that we'll hopefully give you today. And the last one, which is I see as the most important, is network analysis. So when you, and if we move on to the next slide, I'll talk slightly about it. There's a point of when you understand the point or place you are in the analytics adoption curve, you can then understand what happens with all the other objects. So a little bit about analytics adoption curve. So effectively today, most businesses are kind of trying to get a good understanding of what's happening in the business today. So that's the bottom of the curve. There's some really good analysts out there that can grab the data in your silos of your business, pull that data out, and give you some, whether it be Power BI or Tableau, a good understanding. Now that could be how many people have visited the website, how many people are looking at a particular campaign. Now, what we're hopefully going to be starting to talk about today is how do you move up this curve to start saying, well, not only what will happen in the future if we go on this trend or do this activity, but actually what should we do to get the goal and the outcome? And I think that's what enables you to own the conversation in the boardroom, to be able to say, to move past just, okay, here's clicks and views, which often are a stat that, that people hold to, particularly around marketing, and actually say, well, actually, this is what putting this billboard, in this location did to our business in 6 months' time. And it's being able to go all the way back through the fact of how do you create awareness, how do you monitor the buying cycle, how do you then create information to enable your business to go through the sales cycle, and therefore what's the end result of all the activity you did, and hopefully creating a bit of confidence in there, because controversially I think that CMO is one of the highest turnover roles in the C-level suite. And I think for years it's been because actually it's very difficult to be able to say the actual cause that you're creating each time. And that's effectively what complexity theory enables you to do, and moving through the causal chain, predictive analysis, and those sort of things. But again, that's a little bit of the depth, I suppose, that we go into. And when you talk about econometrics, that's what effectively econometrics is. It's about understanding which scientific methodology to use at which time. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone needs to understand all those points or understand when to imply them. And it is quite expensive to get training in depth in each of those areas. But the whole role of businesses like mine is that we can take these kind of methodologies, we can apply them to your business in a matter of weeks. We can run models that give you a proper inference model to say, if I do this, this is what the outcome will be, or I've done this, this is what the outcome was, and being able to justify those statistics to your board level. So if we move on to the next. So just lastly, on Loomlinks, before we go into an actual case study, effectively, the last point, and I'll be pointing it out a couple of times, is that we're in this world where actually there's silos of data. We all know Salesforce or CRM, we know Xero for finance, we know Google Analytics, we know Facebook, LinkedIn. They're all brilliant platforms of what they do. They don't like you talking to each other. They don't like you moving from one platform into the other. So the data is very difficult to actually bring into one place. And that's effectively the work that we do. Effectively, if you can see the globe in front of you, what it's supposed to represent is if you move one object, what happens to not just the ones and the objects in and around it, is actually what happens to all of the objects in that causal chain. Now, just to give you a little bit of background about the work we've done work tracking cargo vessels going around the world. We've done work with military logistics companies tracking tanks going across a field. We've done work with financial numbers and also then finally people, which is what we're going to talk about today, is once you get a network or once you understand how objects move between each other, it doesn't matter if it's a ship, if it's a financial number, if it's human behavior. Effectively, there's ways to bring all this disparate data into one place, look for patterns, add context to that pattern, and then produce recommendations. And I suppose that's the last point to highlight before we move on to the case study, is the difference between quantitative data and qualitative data. And effectively, particularly in econometrics, is about moving into that quantitative data point, about understanding and measuring data, but being able to create an inference, i.e. understanding of what happens throughout that process. But again, happy to go into more depth about the science, but hopefully the next 10, 15 minutes or so, we'll talk about real life case studies and then understand what that actually means and probably add a little bit more context to what I'm talking about.
Excellent, because I think that's really important, particularly when it comes to the specialist insurance market, because, the likes of Aviva, for example, have agencies they employ to run this for them because they have huge budgets and they are working those budgets, and they have to kind of answer to exactly where they're placing those budgets. Whereas in the specialist insurance market, I think we're all in agreement that actually we don't necessarily know how we can use this, if this is actually accessible to us, so it'd be quite interesting to find out how this comes to life in reality. So case study one, I think I'm doing this slide, aren't I? This is a mid-sized UK personal lines broker. So Loomlinks, just to give you actually the heads up as to the kind of makeup of that organisation, they are one of the fastest growing commercial insurers in the UK. As you can read, they've got sort of thousands of clients across the UK and Ireland. They've got a healthy GWP and quite a number of staff, and 35 regional locations. They also have appetite to grow, and a really core appetite to grow, which meant that they're matching with Loomlinks in terms of actually figuring out whether they could use their data to make better business decisions was right. So without further ado, I will hand over to Gary just to talk through the perspective of the client.
Yeah, perfect. So, and you addressed perfectly is the whole point of hopefully what we're going to help to understand is how does it make it relevant for me? How do I use this? But obviously we'll focus on these case studies now, but I'll give you some more as we go through that actually show that you can start really small, or you can do, and we have worked for some of the largest brands in the UK in the financial and insurance market as well as pension markets. Effectively, the question that we got asked is, how do we make best use of our marketing budget? It's one that we've had a few times. The business was spending a fair amount of money on their marketing, and they weren't sure of their return. So it was almost like a validation exercise. These are the best activities, and to not hide the message, part of the work that we did was actually debunking the current system of, look, actually going on to the marketing routes that you're going is leading you to waste quite a fair bit of money. And there are ways to change that, both with open source data and also being more hyper targeted at your target market. So our data scientists effectively, as the slide describes, enabled them to profile what good looks like. Who are their actual target market? How do you hyper target using geographic-based marketing, using propensity to buy data, trend analysis, and I suppose most importantly, how do you reach the people that actually we want to get our message in front of in the best way? So that was the challenge that we were set, and then hopefully we'll talk to you about a couple of things now. If we can just move on to the next slide. So there's a nice graphic here that hopefully will stay with you in the sense of we use it in the majority of work that we do. Effectively, I always say the most important point is to say, what is your actual business objective? Because how do we spend our marketing budget is really a cause of actually an outcome that you want to achieve, i.e. we want to get X amount of clients, we want to make sure our message resonates, or we're looking to change from our current market of who we're currently winning business with to actually who our future market is, who we see our market developing into. So effectively, one of the things that we did is that we understood their current market, and we'll give you some profile pictures of that. We built out a demographic map. Now, normally people would go to people like Acorn or Experian and ask for a demographic map. That data is all open source. So actually you can bring that into a more specific company defined role. And also there's an awful lot of other open source data. So if you want things like origin destination, how people travel to work, or if you want floodplain data, if you want every property in the UK with thatched properties, if you want to understand grade 2 listings, you can create a map of all of your target market depending on the project and type of product that you want to sell to them. So effectively that's where we started. We started with what is your actual objective? And then we mapped out basically using their own internal data, what data they had, and we then looked to enrich it with external data. Now, for this client particularly, we actually, to solve the outcome, we actually used a huge amount of external data and didn't use a large amount of their own data. But that's not always the case. Particularly in the insurance market, we're very used to working with bespoke systems that are brilliant at operating for you in your business, but at the same time, they're normally bespoke CRM systems, so therefore they're lacking the upgrades and the advancements of tools like sentiment analysis or location-based marketing that actually sometimes would be really useful. So effectively, we'll do that review. That process, although sounds long and complicated because we know our way around that market, it actually doesn't take us very long. We then put all that data into one place. So let's say, for example, you have 3 or 4 different places where that data is residing. We'll bring out the relevant data and put it into a warehouse. This isn't to be confused with data transformation, a new ERP system, where actually you're looking at 6 figures to actually get going. You can do this with less than a tenth of the budget in that sense, and you can create an analytics portal for yourself where you've got the relevant data and can be near live in that sense. After we've understood and brought the data into one place, we then create a dashboard, and hopefully we'll talk you through some of the images in that kind of sense. So we'll just move on. Next slide. So again, moving back directly to the case study, where's best to invest our marketing budget? And the challenge that they were facing was that actually the data, they weren't being a data-led organization in that sense. They weren't understanding all of the different things that wanted to, and the data enabled them to achieve. So effectively, again, and we'll move on to the next slide if that's okay, Deirdre.
Yeah.
Effectively, the first bit we did is that we created a segmentation of their client base. Now, segmentation's kind of got a different term for some people, understanding the fact of, yes, they're clients, but actually if you create it on with different variables, that can change all the time. So if you bucket these clients into different groups, you can understand which message should go to which person at which time. And I suppose that was part of the process that we were helping them understand. And in this particular case, they actually their current understanding was wrong in some cases, because there was a time series where actually some of their best clients stayed for an awful long time and they got a lot of referrals from those people, but actually they can also get a lot of churn from that area because they're reliant on agents. Actually that agent is the person that can then move them between brands. And there was a point where actually the behavior of those clients were more receptive to other people's messages in that case as well. So effectively, we're going to take 3 or 4 different outputs to be able to group your clients into different buckets, depending on the outcome you want. Once you get those clients into those different buckets, you can then understand what does good look like. And if we move on to the next slide, Darren. So what we understood is their most valuable client were between 45 and 64. Their income was at the wealthier stage, and they were normally post-family. Now, part of this is really useful because one, we can use that data, and particularly open source data, to find this particular client, and we can enable you to target your advertising both from brand awareness and actual sales activity based on that client. But it also can help you create a really strong picture of who your next client is. Particularly in this case, it was quite an expensive market if you went on to traditional marketing tools to target that demographic. But actually part of the work is not just a case of, if you get these clients and they stay a long time, how do you get them just before they're entering into that bracket when actually they might not be thinking about, or they might not have hit the wealth status. So it was a real combination of both demographic and psychographic work to understand and to actually get, okay, this is what good looks like. How do we then engage them? How do we work with them? If we move on to the next slide. So yeah, effectively, and this is part of the visualization. Again, this is something that we can do in a matter of a couple of weeks. It doesn't take a long time, and you don't need to go out to the big providers and pay a lot of money to get this type of data. It is available open source. So effectively what we were able to do, once we understood what good looked like in their own systems, we were then able to create this is where that target market, also you can reach that target market. Now there's a balance of, there's a famous book called Tipping Point. So understanding how you actually get the connections, particularly in this case, their target market was more likely to talk to friends and get recommendations. And so effectively what we wanted to understand is when you actually put the first type of marketing to them, how did you get a message that would enable to start a conversation? If it was a conversation, it was more likely that actually when you had a greater propensity of people combined together, actually the conversation would be more likely to propagate. So effectively what we looked for, and we helped create 3 different personas, but this is one of them, is there's a particular persona, they like an educated message. And if you see in the top right, that bar is basically how can you reach those people? Would they like to get offers by post, or would they like to get to read customer reviews? Because I think then if you can understand the persona of those people, you can then understand where you've got to put your marketing attention. So this particular persona particularly loved online reviews, which showed the fact that actually referrals are really strong for them, because an online review obviously is secondary to a personal review by someone else. And understanding then the demographics and the age and demographics. So we're able to say, right, okay, we know where your good clients are. These are the areas where you have some penetration, but you're potentially looking to grow your penetration based on the fact that actually there's a network of people. They're more likely to talk to their friends. There are more people in those areas. And effectively it increases your marketing effectiveness substantially, and the figures are yet to come up in a second. So thank you. So yes, so and just to highlight, I suppose, is that what we're able to do is, again, we're able to build those in ways that isn't just a case of, okay, this is where, what do you do with this information once you've got it? And I think that's part of the work, is that we can say X amount of your marketing should go into early awareness, X amount should go into actually online events or face-to-face events, naturally post-COVID. But we can also make sure that the data is usable to whatever platform. So for example, the list that you've got here, you can just export that list, connect it into Facebook. We've got a connector that goes into LinkedIn. So you're able to actually automate part of your marketing. So that, again, one of the things that you never want to do is spend money understanding the data and intelligence you want, and then actually find it's really difficult to implement in that point. So effectively, we're looking for the right type of people in your business. We're then looking to say, where are those people, and where are the people that actually are your next best client, and also create this kind of lookalike kind of matching in that kind of case. So this image actually is a case of one of the activities that we asked them to do. It was really effective to give them something in hand. So particularly, not just in this case, but another case reference is that cold mail through the door, door drops, leaflet dropping, those type of things used to be something that actually people really didn't like. There's a whole new generation where actually you don't get that kind of cold leafleting anymore. And actually, particularly younger generations find it really valuable because they've got something in hand, because they're so used to getting digital communications. So again, part of this is going down to each of those personas, going down to a behavior, start understanding how you can get that message in. And like I say, although there's an awful lot of data, when I'm just talking about that case study alone, we're talking about, we've got a 15-year-old behavioral surveying data set. We've got all of the open source data from the Office of National Statistics to understand demographics and mixing that with psychographics. We've then got all of their data. That's an awful lot of data, but part of the work and the benefit of working with a data science outfit like ours is we can process all that in a really small time. And actually, it's not a case of, because we can do it in a short time, it doesn't lead to these big bills, that you get with some of the larger suppliers. And it's a lot more bespoke to actually your business and actually what objective that you're trying to achieve. So if we just move on to the next one, great. So again, understanding and overlaying in your business areas that have got low engagement or high engagement. So particularly here, and the example isn't just a case of how does that demographic overlay, is in this example, we've actually overlaid and being able to then create propensity matching against all of the properties in the UK that have got grade 2 listing or thatched houses or are based on the floodplain. So effectively, again, we're adding that other data set to say, okay, cool, for another part of your marketing, we want a specific, particularly when we want to create early awareness, is there's no point wasting all your money in your marketing in areas where you don't have clients that can even or buy your service that you're trying to sell. These are the specific postcodes that you want to do your advertising in. Instead of going into to Google, for example, it will charge you more to have specific postcodes, but ultimately it's worth paying more rather than having having marketing that goes into other postcodes where no one's going to buy your product in the first place. And so i.e. what we're trying to do is help you navigate that path. And it's not just pay-per-click marketing. I know we're talking quite a lot about pay-per-click marketing at the moment, but as I say, it's also about where do I go put a billboard. We've got an example where actually a company were sponsoring Canary Wharf and putting billboards and advertisings. They asked us to do a review and we told them they should stop it, because the persona of when someone arrived in that sector is they were already in their phone, they were very engaged in the work and the day ahead. Actually, there were 3 main train stations: Brighton, Peterborough and Oxford. And actually, if they sponsored the train routes, they were more receptive to a message at that time. So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand the whole buying cycle, measure it against your sales cycle, but making sure we take out all of the the variables that actually would distort or waste a lot of your marketing in that kind of sense. So I've already referenced this, but just to be clear, effectively there's an element of psychographic work as well as the other pieces of work that we've done. Understanding the persona. So if I give you a reference, there's lots and lots of different personas, but if I say there's 3 main personas that we work on when you group at high level. So we've got the influencer, and people will assume that's like a social influencer. And it is similar in one sense. It's not exact. But so an influencer particularly likes to have the latest technology. They like a special offer. If you're offering 10% off, they're able to tell other people that actually they've got a discount. And so that's why marketers have been marketing to these influencers for a long time, because they're also very receptive to your marketing. So they will click. They want to know what's going on. It's exactly the same thing of gamification and that endorphin rush of winning the next level in that sense. And so, yes, it's good sometimes, particularly if you're looking for short-term sales or you're looking to increase, sales because you're behind that month. But in fact, actually, they can also be really distracting to your overall goal. You've then got the main part of the population. Sorry, an influencer it roughly forms about 23% of our personality types. So 23% in a country would be that kind of personality, depending on the subject, which does make it change. You've then got the main part of the population, which is, say, 60% of the population. They love case studies. They love to understand that someone's already gone there, and I know that's going to work for me because it worked for someone else. So being really case study heavy is or in this case, online referrals, making sure that you've got some sort of in-hand promotion in that sense, so where they can relate to the person that's already bought it. Forms a large part, 60% of the population, but you really have to have an established product and offering at this point. Last part of the population is the most valuable part or persona. It forms roughly about 17-18% of the population. Effectively, these people are called advocates. They're advocates because once you've got them, they're not going to leave you. They're going to take a very educated view. So they're going to understand, when I buy insurance, I need to look at these points. It relates to anything from a car to a dishwasher. They're going to make decisions based on what they believe is the right thing because they've looked at it. They're also form part of your friend group. So when you go buy a car, you normally know someone in your network that knows about cars. So you might go and ask them, or a guitar, or whatever that be. There's always a subject matter expert in that sense. They're the most powerful. They're very difficult to reach because they won't react to your marketing. They will take it in. It's called the mantelpiece effect. They'll take in your educated message. They'll put it on a mantelpiece, and when they want to go buy it, they'll buy it, but they'll buy it because they're ready, not because actually that you've created a special offer. But once you get those people, they will tell 10, 20 people that you are the best person to go to when you need something particular. And that's part of, I suppose, the work that we do, is that if you can understand where you are and your business's objective, and then what's realistic, because we all know in marketing, someone says, oh, drop that, we need you to go do this, and I need results tomorrow. Is actually, if you want that type of long-term growth or substantial, exponential, using the term wrong from a data scientist, my team would laugh at me. But if you want that huge amount of growth, effectively, you have to consider the persona of the person that you're working with in that sense. So just a quick point on what does all those stats and what does all that information mean? Effectively, we were able to, well, the stats hopefully talk for themselves. You know, we were able to increase revenue from the marketing activity by 34%, 184% ROI, and therefore also decreasing churn by 24%, and that's by understanding actually things along the lines of, you know, if you can understand a persona, you can understand the triggers of why someone's going to leave. And if you can understand the triggers, you can then premeditate anyone leaving, because you can understand and inject before someone leaves. So yeah, hopefully the figures speak for themselves in the work that we do. I think that if I talk about it, not just in the statistical method, but actually what does it mean, is effectively people spend tens of thousands of pounds on marketing, and ultimately you're looking for a return. And sometimes, and the platforms out there, the major platforms, although brilliant, you know, I'm not anti these platforms, but they are very self-focused. They're very good at giving you numbers and stats, but sometimes those numbers and stats lie, and they literally do lie in that sense, or they infer something that's simply not true. And effectively, I suppose what we're trying to do is bring the stats in from a number of places and actually give you a clear picture of what the causal effect is. Do this now, it will give you this. And you can do that with 4 or 5 fields. You don't need to open up your entire data set to us. It's amazing what we can enrich. And I suppose one of the biggest points that we get often is my data's a mess, so it won't work for us. I can tell you that our machine algorithms are very good at sorting out data better than someone being able to eyeball it. So,
Gary, these results do talk for themselves. There's no doubt about that. But I know that a number of people that are on this call and clients that we deal with are in the B2B arena
yeah.
rather than B2C. So how can you actually justify, you know, sort of this type of exercise to what would be really smaller channels?
Yeah, great. So, and effectively, I could talk a lot more and a lot longer about B2B, so you have to stop me. But majority of the work we do is actually B2B. Part of the problem with B2B is there's lots of people with data sets, and they're willing to sell you contacts and those type of things, but it doesn't actually necessarily bring you to the right understanding or understand propensity of people wanting to buy. So effectively, some of our work, one, we've got our own database of businesses taken from Companies House, so all open source. We've then got a list of various things like investment and all those type of things. You can get some from some of the other major players. Like I say, some of it's not unique. We've also got a Google search tool. So one of the things, sometimes we get people that come with very obvious, you know, I sell to florists that sell roses. You know, okay, cool. Well, we can profile all of the businesses in the UK that sell roses, you know, in that case. But actually, sometimes people come to us really obscure, look, we need serverless till technology companies, you know, and that's very hard to find. So effectively, some of the ways you can do it is you can automate a search process on Google. So you can look at just type in serverless tills, and obviously anyone wanting to sell it will come up. So you create the URL and then create that kind of target list. You can then go into published articles, and you can understand the sentiment of the words in those articles, and then start pulling out kind of targets, competitors, and all those type of things. So the first place I always say in the B2B landscape is that, yes, you do need to understand what good looks like. So again, profiling your businesses to say, these are the type of people that stay longer, not necessarily that are the highest spenders, but actually produce the most amount of revenue, profit, whatever it is that you're measuring against. Once you've understood what good looks like, you then need to understand who is our target market. Once you can understand the full total addressable market, you then move into, okay, when and how should we, you know, let's say there's 100 or 10,000, you know, depending on how big and how many people you're looking for. If normally, obviously, there's more than you can reach or speak to, so you have to create a propensity list. These are the people we should speak to on this particular day. Now, that can be done in lots and lots of different levels. You can just say, okay, cool, they're the closest, we've got geographical spread, we've got some brand awareness, so let's call these people first. Or we can create market triggers, you know, i.e., gold has just increased, so therefore anyone selling to China is the perfect day to call them, because they'll be needing some more foreign currency, or they'll be needing an insurance for a particular product. So there's lots of market indicators that you can actually create, just they're all publicly available on Google, the information. So you just need to be able to tag it to an account and then tag it into someone to say, today is the right day to call this person. And naturally, it's statistics. So it doesn't mean that is the right day to call that person, but what we're trying to do is increase your likelihood. And again, you don't need 6 figures to do this type of work.
Yeah, which is great, I think, and music to everyone's ears. But actually, that leads me on nicely to the, obviously many insurers have actuarial departments whose main job really is to use data to guide business strategy. How do you work with them? Sort of what sort of is that a barrier, or do you see that as actually as something that's pretty helpful?
No, not at all. Actually, it's actually really beneficial. So effectively, the whole point is that we're extension of your team. So there are because it's an underdeveloped area, there are lots of different skill sets that you have to understand in econometrics. The people have got a different skill that might help you with one particular part of your problem, but actually you need a little bit of lots of different people, and without needing the AXA insurance, okay, we're going to chuck lots and lots of money and hire lots and lots of people. Actually, agencies like us are able to come in and fulfill just a small part of whatever they need. So everything from data engineering, API development, understanding 3 or 4 different methodologies, whether it be behavioral, whether it be causal, and so effectively we're very used to working as part of a team, and particularly coming through with particular problems, i.e. we don't know how to solve this point. And we've done that for large companies and small, some of the large ones particularly because they need to understand what's the best action to do with a particular group of products, and they just simply don't have the skill set. There's a shortage of skills in the market. So.
Thank you. So case study 2, and we have about 7 minutes left, Gary. So we're probably going to run through this a little quicker than the last one. This was a leading European insurance company. So Gary, you know more about them in terms of what the makeup of the business.
Yeah. So effectively, they're a large business, and they hadn't had a good grip of their data. That they were able to create reporting, but it was very difficult. It was time consuming, and effectively what we're able to do is save their internal team weeks a month. So 3 weeks in 1 month in that sense, to be able to create this reporting by automating it. And the difference is, so effectively what we did is we took their financial data and we took their sales data and we mixed it together and we created 3 levels of reporting. We took their reporting that was literally just their day-to-day reporting every single day, understanding what's going on in their business, through to actually, kind of month-end reporting, quarterly reporting, all the way through to, hourly updates in that sense. We're able to then create board-level reporting, i.e. this is what's happening in your finance department and your sales department. Therefore, you can create predictive analysis of where you're going to be in next quarter and the following quarter. But then also we were able to create, and investor reporting, by the way. So they were creating quarterly reports for their investors. So instead of them needing to expand their internal team, they were able to use their internal team on some of the projects they were using. And they're able to use this, what they saw more as a mundane activity, but a very important one to understand what's happening in the business. And we're able to move it to that automated fashion. By automating it, what I mean is instead of pulling out the data into a Power BI or a Tableau type software, we're able to put it into a warehouse and create a Python script. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything or is important, but effectively what enables you to do is once you've built it, you can run a report in minutes after that. So instead of having to do it every single month, we're able to just press a button and refresh. And we did make iterative changes month on month, i.e., okay, we'd like this view, we'd like to include this now, but that automation process is well worth, saving 3 weeks a month for a few members of your team in that sense. So and I've tried to summarize each of the points of the of how we took the various data sources, like I say, and I highlighted it earlier, but speeding through based on time is effectively those KPIs that they were able to do. We sat down with them, understood what they needed to achieve, actually sat down with their CFO as well as their CCO, and we just took those KPIs, moved all of the data, only the relevant data. And again, this isn't to be confused with with a new ERP system or anything on those lines. It's not a 6-month project. It took us less than 4 weeks in that sense from start to finish. And in that time, we created reporting that actually then enabled them to just cycle through their reports. They were able to create a single source of truth across their organization. And it, by the way, it did include then moving into the marketing piece. So the TAM, in this case, it was a B2B example. So who are all the businesses that we currently work with? What does good look like? And who are the businesses that we next go with? The thing about being able to put these data sources together, one example would be most businesses do churn reporting from their CRM platform at the moment. Actually, churn reporting is really good when you look at your finance report, because if you see a business, start to pay a slightly different way or slightly late, there indicates that there's been a change. I'm not saying that all businesses would then leave you, but actually it was one indicator that was really strong for them. And this is part of the piece and the term around automation, is that once you get the mundane and the insight reporting, you can then move on to why does that happen? And if you can understand why it happens, you can then build out a prescriptive list of, okay, if we see this, our action should be this.
Excellent. Sounds good.
And so, yeah, I think that just the what does the numbers, we increased or decreased their work activity by 3 out of the 4 weeks in a month. We can do that across multiple business units. So if I know a lot of insurance companies grow by acquisition, there's absolutely no difference in the fact of us being able to pull company 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It's all a case of being able to build it into a warehouse, create it as a lighthouse environment. So if you ever want to leave us, it's your data, you can take it with you. We'll manage, maintain it, take away the need to understand the science, and we'll produce it back to you in a way that's really simple.
Good stuff. That sounded excellent. So just to reiterate, I've got a couple of really quick questions for you, and you have actually touched on a few of them along the way. But obviously, I mentioned in my intro that the highly respected Mark Ridson believes econometrics to be pricey and complex. And obviously, you mentioned that you've given us examples of case studies of where it's been applied. What would your, what's your pricing structure? What would your smallest client be? Obviously, you deal with small, medium, large across the board, just to make it, everybody understand how accessible this is.
Yeah, so just to give you a really factual and honest view, like we do things in a few hundreds of pounds a month. So we've got a client that we charge £500 a month. We do one specific task, and it is our smallest client. But we're able to do things with them, and their growth figures have been really great. But again, we don't charge on how much growth you get. We charge on the complexity of the job that you're asking us to do. So we're able to charge hundreds in some cases. Don't be wrong, it comes to several thousand, 10,000 pounds a month when we do some really complex things for some people. But there's one of the things that you'll get from us is that we're really transparent. I've genuinely gone into a business and worked with them when they had a £300,000 quote for a new ERP system. And the only reason they were doing it was to get a good grip of their analytics. And I did the project instead of 6 months, in weeks. And effectively the price tag was a tenth of what they originally were quoted. So
impressive, very impressive. And by the sounds of things, also back to the fact it's complex, time consuming, really it sounds as if you have a period of time up front to set up, and then it can be.
That's right.
So it's
that's right. 80% of the work that we do is in advance. After you created that automation, it's just run and maintain. So excellent.
So in terms of the offer, I'm going to zoom through because we are on time. I'll let you talk this through very quick.
Yeah, effectively, people can come to us and they can say, here's my problem or the objective that I'm trying to solve, and we can create a custom quote for them. Alternatively, if people want to understand, and the term we hear a lot is, I don't know how this applies to me, effectively, that we can understand from a commercial and a data science perspective their business. We come in, spend a couple of weeks just saying, okay, and of that couple of weeks, it's only a couple of days of your time. We come in, we say, okay, these are the platforms you've got, these are the objectives you want to do, and this is where I think your roadmap should go. We charge a very small fee, considering some of the big consultancy firms charge, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands for this type of service. We'll come in and do it a lot smaller. The reason we do it for such a cheap, we just cover our costs, is because we know we create great clients and actually work with them. So effectively, we put in the fact we'll do it for £6,000. If you want us to come in and understand your business and tell you what the possibilities of using an econometrics, style, or data science in general, then we're happy to come in and work with you. With no obligations to move forward with us. But obviously, we know that normally people do, because they can get a really open, honest review of what they're trying to achieve. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, Gary, thank you so much for your time. It's been really insightful. To those out there, this recording will be available on our Free Partners LinkedIn company page. And there'll also be a link provided to our podcast channel, where you'll see both this recording and then recordings of other webinars and podcasts we've run over the course of the last 12 months. If you do have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with either myself or Gary, whose email address is right in front of you there. Many thanks. Have a great day.